There is a phenomena today that you're probably aware of, and this is where nationalists, younger nationalists usually, they have started to retreat to the country, to move out of the cities, find a place to live out in the country. And now this has been happening across Europe now for a few years that I'm aware of. I've heard people talking about it for years in England, in Britain, and so I assume it's also happening there. And it's certainly happening in Ireland recently. You have nationalists. It would seem younger nationalists who have decided to engage in, I suppose, what they would call a tactical retreat. And the idea is that you, let me see where I'm going. Yeah, the idea is that you make a tactical retreat to the country. You get out of the city, you find a quiet place in the country, you live I suppose you'd call it a self-sustaining life. You look after yourself, you, if possible, grow your own food, you look after your mental health, you concentrate on your career or that sort of thing. And essentially you do this and you have a family. Or if you don't have a family, you get yourself a family, and you create a sort of parallel community of nationalists. As I say, now you move to the country, and you don't engage in politics overtly. You don't try and convert people down the country. You just look after yourself, live a healthy life, get your own life in order, take care of your family, and keep the flame alive within your own family. And of course, while you're doing this, there are other nationalists in various parts of Ireland doing the same thing. And at a practical level, you know, if you have children, the holidays come around, and you want your children to be in a healthy, non-woke environment. So you might take your children to a caravan site, let's say, and of course you wouldn't be the only nationalist there. As usual, I'm rambling, not expressing myself well, but I think you know what I mean. It's moving to the country, looking after yourself, looking after your children, trying to protect them as much as possible from the whole woke thing, but also sort of keeping in touch with other nationalists like yourself. And as I say, in the summertime, for instance, it means you can go to wherever it is you go on your holidays, but there will be other nationalists there who are also sort of living under the radar. So your children have an opportunity to meet, let's say, nationalist children. So this is a long game now, a generational thing. And basically what you do is you do that, you live under the radar, you keep your head down, and you create this network, and then you basically wait a generation, 2 generations. You wait until the circumstances are right, until people, if you like, the broad public, are ready to change things and want to change things. Now, in theory, all of this sounds great. But there are two practical problems. The first problem is that this type of thing, it might have worked in the past. I'm sure it did. But we're now living in a very different world. And as this woke nightmare, as this woke fascism spreads more and more and gains more and more power and momentum, and as things get worse and worse and worse, these woke fascists, they might be content to let you retire to the country just now, but in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, when they have absolute total power, not just in Ireland but across all Western countries, at that point they're going to come after you. As simple as that. They're not going to sit back and allow you to live in peace or something like that. That's not going to happen. They're going to come after you and they're going to shut you down. And well, you can see that yourself now, even at this moment in time. They'll go after anyone. And there are armies of these people, NGO funded people, who they like hunting down people, they like going after people, they like bullying people. Now, as I say, for the immediate future, they might be more or less happy to allow you to retire to the country, but that won't last. And you know, it's really not possible in a modern society to sort of fade into the background. That's really not possible. It's too easy, like these nationalists, it's too easy to identify these people and to put them out of action. So as I've said, once upon a time this might have worked, and it probably did work, perhaps very well, but over the next 10, 20 years it certainly won't work. It's you'd have to be very naive to think that it could work. There is, however, a second reason why I would be opposed to this. And the second reason is this. You see, these people, and they're usually young, or younger nationalists. You see, these young nationalists, they're not in fact making a tactical retreat. They are, I'll have to get away from this noise, it's too noisy. Bear with me, really was much too noisy. Oh yes, they're not engaging in a tactical retreat. They are actually surrendering. They're giving up. This is a way of doing nothing and yet presenting yourself to yourself and others as someone who is in fact doing something. But this is just surrender. Or at best it's just playing silly games. Now, back into the park here. Yeah. Yes, now these nationalists, these younger nationalists who are doing this sort of thing, a lot of these people, they obviously think of themselves at some level, they think of themselves as sort of the theoreticians or the intellectuals of the new nationalism. But the reality is that To put it very simply, these are people who read a handful of books and they read maybe the highlights of various philosophers, maybe Nietzsche or people like that. But they read a few books and they take the ideas they read in those books and they regurgitate them. And these ideas they're not remotely intellectual or even intelligent. Essentially, these are ethno-nationalists and anti-Semites. And another characteristic is, of course, they are, as a general rule, and in the old-fashioned sense of the word, racist. They have very negative views of a whole host of foreigners. And now, if you didn't know better, if let's say you were a normie, as they say, if you were just an ordinary member of the public, you might watch these people on their YouTube channels or being interviewed on YouTube channels or on various platforms. There are more and more new platforms opening, and you'll see these people on those platforms. And if you didn't really know a lot, you might think, listening to these people, that they were very intellectual. But essentially all they're doing is, as I say, they're people, they've read a handful of books and they just regurgitate them. And if you don't know any better, you might think, oh God, these are deep thinkers and all that. But all of these people are saying the same thing. And in very simple, crude terms, it's ethno-nationalism, anti-Semitism, and as I say, a lot of them have very negative views of foreigners. So, now of course these are people who would have a great respect for the patriots of old, but none of them have any intentions of emulating those heroes. And this is one thing that, particularly in Ireland, that I don't like about nationalists. You know, all my life I've heard people talking about the heroes of old and the rebels of old and how they fought the British. Well, none of them are fighting this woke thing. They're doing nothing. And this latest move to the country thing, it's just a way of running away, of giving up, of surrendering, while pretending that you're doing something profound. But yes, it's very easy to present yourself or allow yourself to be perceived as very intellectual. All you have to do is buy a few books. Well, you don't even have to buy the books. You can watch a few YouTube lectures and pick up some of the phrases, some of the quotes, and you can sound very intellectual, very deep. But as I say, the basic ideas that these people have they're old ideas, they're bankrupt ideas, and they are nonsense. There is no Jewish conspiracy. That's rubbish. And ethno-nationalism, it's a simplistic answer to a very complicated problem. And you know, this idea that we can create sort of a, you know, this idea that you can turn the clock back and go back in time is nonsense. You know, creating sort of white states for white people and all that. That's not going to happen. And even if there was no wokeness, if there was no multiculturalism, no wokeness, inevitably, with modern communication, with modern travel, you're going to have some level of foreigners coming into your country, and very few white countries will remain totally white. That's just, if you're after something like that, that's just rubbish. But that's really all I wanted to say. And what I'm saying to you now, you won't hear many people saying what I'm saying, and it needs to be said. All of these, and I'm particularly critical of nationalists, Irish nationalists in particular, because they never shut up about how we fought the British. And they're doing nothing, absolutely nothing. And I was just thinking, before I came out, I was thinking, when it comes to nationalism, there are lots of problems with this simplistic Irish sort of nationalism. And what was I going to say? Yes, there are problems with this nationalism, and my head has just gone blank. This happens all the time. What was I going to say? I'll think of it in a moment. God, this is really frustrating. It's really frustrating, and this happens. Maybe it's my age. Maybe it's the first sign of Alzheimer's or something like that. But oh yes, you see, a lot of the nationalists, they talk about the Irish people. Well, the stark reality is that the Irish people are, for the most part, traitors. So this nationalist sort of perception you have of this nationalist idea, who are you going to save Ireland for? The Irish people? Well, the Irish people they've shown very clearly they don't give a damn about Ireland. So this nationalist society are going to create, who's going to be living in this nationalist society? And, if we were to, by some miracle, defeat this wokeism and abolish it, we would have to, one of the first things we would have to do is we would have to import huge numbers of foreigners into Ireland. We would have to bring in hundreds, possibly thousands of teachers, people in the education business. And you would have to, if it was possible, just to defeat wokeism tomorrow, we would have to import thousands and thousands and thousands of foreigners to, as I say, run the education system. We would have to bring in foreigners to make up our army, our police force, our civil service. We couldn't have Irish people doing that. You couldn't get rid of wokeism and then just pretend none of this happened. You'd have to get rid of the criminals, and that means getting rid of lots and lots and lots of Irish people. So you would have to import huge numbers of immigrants into Ireland to actually run the society. So this is something that nationalists don't seem to have factored into their thinking at all. They seem to have this totally mad idea that if you could be wokeism and free Ireland again, that you just carry on. Well, you can't. As I said, at the very least, you'd have to replace every teacher in Ireland. And the new teachers would have to come from abroad. So, and as I was saying, who's going to be living in this new Ireland? because the Irish have made it perfectly clear they don't care about it. So in this nationalist community, who's going to be living in this nationalist community? The last thing you'll want living in Ireland in the future, if we were to defeat wokeism, the last thing you'd want is the country to be populated by Irish people, by traitors. You know, so this romantic, naive idea that, you know, you create a nationalist community, that you create a sort of, I don't know, white nationalist Ireland. Well, where are you going to get the people to do that? Well, you'll have to bring most of them in from abroad. You'll have to bring foreigners in. Maybe foreigners from Eastern Europe who are much more likely to be patriotic, etc., etc. But that's really all I wanted to say. I had intended, there's another park up from here, I'd intended going up there and sitting down and making this video properly, but while it's a beautiful sunny day here in Dublin, it's also quite cold. In fact, I think it's freezing, but that's probably in part my age. And I don't eat very well, so I'm quite thin and all that, so I tend to feel the cold. But yeah. Yes, you might, if you've been watching my channel, you might think, well, I've got a thing about Irish nationalists. But, and you would be right, but I've got good reason to have a thing. You know, I have very good reason to not like Irish nationalism. I never liked it, not even when I was a child. But every time I go to make a video, this happens. I come out and then I lose track of what I wanted to say. But yeah, this idea, anyhow, that people can retreat to the country and keep the flame alive and look after yourself and create a network, this is nonsense. You know, once the war is totally lost, once wokeism has completely taken over Ireland, then they're going to go after anyone who dissents, and there'll be nowhere to hide. And of course, if you want to stop this wokeism, well, you're going to have to start doing it now. And that means doing stuff, real stuff, doing what needs to be done. And I don't know if I said this already, but you know, you cannot love your country and love your family, because if you love your country, you would be more than happy to sacrifice your family if necessary. And you know, a lot of these nationalist sites, they're into family and all that sort of thing, and that's fine. But if you want to fight a dictatorship, then there's a good chance you will be destroyed in the process, and there's a very good chance your family will be destroyed, your children destroyed. So, and so there you have a dilemma. You know, are you prepared to sacrifice your family, your children, destroy their lives? Because if you're not going to win this war. Because that's what the actual, real patriots in the past did. Their families were evicted, their families starved on the streets, etc., etc. You know, people forget that when they're reading these stories of the heroes and the rebels and all that. the human cost of the families to their children was huge. But there you are. I'm going to finish up now. I should have stayed at home and made this video, but I needed to get out for some air, and it's a nice park. So there you are. Oh, by the way, I know that some of you watch History Debunked, and one or two people have even said that they're reminded, when they watch my videos, they're reminded of History Debunked. Well, of course, Simon, is that his name? His videos are much better than mine. He does a lot of research. He's also an historian and an educated man and all of that. So my videos are Mickey Mouse compared to his. But one thing I noticed is all his videos are from his house. So if you're over in his channel, why don't you suggest that he get his mobile phone and go outside. I'd love to see his neighbourhood. I don't know if there's a local park or a local river he goes for a walk along. You know, he's always stuck in that one room. So there you are. Take care. Yeah. There you are. Take care.